Here's a taste of where today's conversation goes.
Exciting things await us when we can be brave. If we can just be brave and kind of step outside our comfort zone, then exciting opportunities are waiting for us. I think sometimes, especially as somebody who deals with anxiety, I often talk myself out of things before I even try them because I'm so nervous and I can think of all the bad things that are going to go wrong. One of the takeaways is just to be brave, to try new things. And it's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to have those jitters, but be brave anyway. Becky Scharnhorst, and I am an author from Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin and spent some time in a couple other states, Pennsylvania and Iowa, but now I'm back to the Midwest and I live in central Wisconsin with my husband and 2 kids and several silly pets, although sadly no octopuses. I did write a book though about octopuses, and that's the one we're going to be talking about tonight or today, and it's called How to Get Your Octopus to School. It's about a nervous octopus who would rather stay home and play hide and seek with his dear friend instead of going to school, but she knows he's going to love it, and she'll tell him that as soon as she can find him. So it's just a really fun back to school story that kind of addresses first day jitters and also being brave and trying new things, and also the challenge of letting go when our little ones grow up and go off to school. So there's a lot of good things in there for both kids and parents.
Welcome to the Picturebooking podcast, a show that celebrates children's books by chatting with those who make them. And now here is Nadia Salomon and Becky Scharnhorst. Enjoy.
And tell us about how you landed your TV interview about your book, because that was something that we talked about in relation to marketing, because that is something that some of our listeners who are also authors and writers and illustrators are always fascinated by. Oh, how did you land that interview? So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, actually, that interview I did on TV was last August or September. I can't exactly remember the date, but that was for my second book that came out called This Field Trip Stinks. And I just reached out to some local news stations to let them know that I had a book coming out, and it was a great book to share during that time of year because it kind of has a back to school theme as well. Ironically, I've only written 3 books about school and back to school kind of things, and those are the 3 that have sold. So I don't know why that is, but all of my books kind of have that school tie-in. So my first book was My School Stinks, my second book is This Field Trip Stinks, and now How to Get Your Octopus to School. But really what I did is I just reached out and told them that I had these books, and I had some journals and some My School Stinks journals and a field journal that were on my website, and I thought that they would make some really good resources for teachers and parents as kids were getting ready to go back to school, and they agreed. So they invited me to be a part of it and invited me to be on one of their morning shows, which was a lot of fun. And I was really thankful for the opportunity, although nervous, because I typically don't enjoy being interviewed or being on podcasts because I have anxiety. So it's not that I don't enjoy them, it's just that they make me nervous. So it was a stretch for me to do both of those things, to be on TV and even to do this podcast. But I think that's one of the things that I've learned in dealing with my anxiety over the years, is that just because something may make me nervous or anxious doesn't mean it's not a great opportunity, and doesn't mean that I shouldn't give it a try. I don't want my anxiety to kind of hold me back from trying new things. And actually, that's a theme that's in a lot of my stories. Like my first 2 books feature a little bit of a nervous character too. And that's probably because that's how I am. And I've always been that way. So I'm trying to embrace themes in my books and also be willing to go out of my comfort zone sometimes and try new things.
Well, you have to. I mean, we were talking about, let's pretend we were in a green room before we came on to podcasting. We were talking about anxiety and how it's real, and how people who may not experience it or understand it know what it feels like on the inside. This was a conversation that I literally just had on Twitter. And we were talking about anxiety and how to get over it. And it's kind of, you don't really get over it, but you learn how to manage it. And,
yes, exactly.
Right. And the way that I learned how to manage it was at the time that I developed my anxiety. I never had it. But then in 2005, I was working in Mississippi at our local TV station, WJTV Channel 12. And I want to send a shout out to, like, the news director there, Rick Russell, and Carlton Houston, who they were the news directors there. And when they realized that, like, I literally was freezing on camera when we were going live. I mean, imagine having to do a live shot on the scene of some major news story and you can't even utter a word that makes sense. And it's scary because I felt like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Like, I'm about to cry, I'm about to pass out. And it was just like this debilitating feeling, and you can't shake it. It's like your stomach's trembling on the inside, your chest feels like it's collapsing, you can't breathe, you can't even formulate a thought.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, yeah, dealing with anxiety is a struggle. And I talked about it on Twitter, and I told people, I'm like, just because you see that, I may look like I'm comfortable right now, and right now I am because I'm with you, but sometimes, it gets nerve wracking, and then you get that fluttery feeling, and you're like, okay, I need to breathe. So a good therapist, having people who support you, I think that helps you through those feelings. And as an author, right? We tend to be more introverted, and, you're always behind the scenes. So when you have to be in front of the camera or on a podcast, whether it's audio or video, you could still have that feeling. But now that you're aware that you have this issue, you learn techniques to, okay, breathe more, take your time. And then if you find yourself talking too fast, slow down.
Yes, all of those things are helpful. I'm a fast talker anyway, whether I have anxiety or not. I am a fast talker, and I always have been. But I do think a lot of those techniques are things that have helped me too over the years. Like, I've just learned to control my breathing. Just that alone makes such a big difference. Breathing in and then breathing out for longer. Those kind of things kind of just trick your body into believing that you're in a relaxed state, even if you're not. So those types of tricks have really helped. And I think, like you said, just talking about it and being open and honest about it also kind of takes away some of the power, like just to put it out there and say, yep, this is nerve-wracking for me, and this is stressful and makes me anxious, then I'm going to do it anyway. And just kind of taking that initial step of acknowledging it and finding a way to deal with it makes a big difference.
And now we're finding it in your book. So when we originally, talked about your books, we never really thought about this aspect or this theme. But when you look at your characters, that's one of the themes, that anxiety that kids have. And so, it's interesting that also your 3 books are about school. So is it more of like a nostalgia, luck of the draw, or like...
I don't know. We've certainly submitted many other stories that are not school related, and these are the ones that have connected with people the most. I don't know. I mean, I think, first of all, for my first 2 books, I did kind of set out with wanting to write about a nervous character, because that's kind of how I've always been. And I wanted to address it in kind of a humorous way. What would make a nervous character even more nervous? And so then I put him in a school with wild animals, because of course, why wouldn't that make you nervous if you're now also worried about like getting eaten on top of finishing your math homework? So that was a little more intentional in that one. And then as far as why they're all school, I was a kid who got anxious before school, every year. It didn't matter how much I liked school or how much I enjoyed my teachers or seeing my friends. I always had those first day of school jitters all the way through high school. And I don't know if that was just something that, subconsciously inspired me when I was writing these stories. But I do think, change is hard, and really starting school is always a change, because even if it's at the same school, you have a different teacher, you have different, classmates, and you have different routines. So change is just nerve-wracking and can be stressful for a lot of people and a lot of kids. So I think that's kind of why it fits well to address those first day jitters, because it's something that makes sense and is something a lot of people experience. So
now I have to ask you, why an octopus? I mean, I can imagine why, but why an octopus?
Oh man. So it's interesting. This story, How to Get Your Octopus to School, was actually inspired by the very first story I wrote. So when I started writing, I think I wrote the story in 2014. I didn't really get serious about writing until 2016, but about that time, my kids were getting ready to go to school. and I was deciding to just write a story. I would tell them stories all the time, and I'm like, why don't I just write it down? My sister had been encouraging me to like write a children's book for years and years, ever since I had my job at Barnes & Noble in graduate school. She was like, you should write a children's book, because I fell in love with them and told everybody about them and was obsessed with them for years. So she had been telling me to do it for a long time. And finally, when my kids were getting ready to school, I told them a story one night. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write that one down. And it was called The Cuddle Monster. It was about a little girl who was so worried about her first day of school that she actually turned into a cuddle monster. She sprouted tentacles and carried her entire family and her goldfish Floyd around with her, and then brought him to school with her. So that was the first story I wrote. And I really loved that story, and it got a lot of good feedback. It actually caught the attention of a few agents. I didn't sign with them, but I think 4 or 5 agents requested more manuscripts after seeing that story. So it did connect with people, but it wasn't connecting enough. And I had one agent actually who had requested to see more. Natalie Lacasil had said, I really love this. It's got a lot of heart, but I don't know if it's going to be strong enough to compete in the market. And so, or she didn't said it wasn't going to be able to stand out in the market. So I just kind of put it aside, and I started writing other things and submitting to agents. But about 2 years later, my son was doing a school project on octopuses, and we Googled YouTube videos on octopus camouflage. And I can't even tell you how shocked I was watching these videos. I was shocked and amazed and stared in wonder for well over an hour. We were Googling octopus camouflage videos then. And right before my eyes, this octopus would turn from a bumpy rock into a smooth leaf and just completely and perfectly blend in with his surroundings. And I was immediately fascinated by these creatures, and I started to learn more about them. And I wanted to write a book about them. I wrote down some ideas, like a nonfiction book about octopuses, or an octopus hide and seek book. Like, I wanted to do something that highlighted octopus camouflage. Then shortly after that, I was like, you know what? I should just take that first story and rewrite it with an octopus as the main character, and then have it be like a how to get your octopus to school book, because that would be really challenging since octopuses are so good at hiding. And that's one of the things I love about this book, is that it's a sweet, silly back to school book, but it also has actual information about the octopuses. So the octopuses use camouflage to hide throughout the book, and they do that in real life. They're generally shy creatures, and that is true for real octopuses, and that's true for this one. They jet away. They can slip through teeny tiny holes. All of this information is in the book, and it's real information. And then in the back of the book, I also included more octopus facts. So the reason it's an octopus is because I'm obsessed with octopuses. I absolutely love them. I would write 10 more books on octopuses. I cannot get enough of them. They are my favorite creature, and they're intelligent. They can play. I mean, there's so many fun things. And I was really excited when my editor asked me to include some octopus facts in the back, because originally I didn't have that in the manuscript. And then she came back and asked later on during the editing process. And I was like, yes, please. I will definitely do that. So that's how it turned out to be an octopus.
Well, that's the great part of when you're in the editing process with, your publisher, where sometimes you didn't think about having something, or you did have something and you take it out and you might have to put it back in again, because that's kind of where I'm at with one of my current manuscripts or books that's due out. But it's interesting that you didn't have the facts, but I think it's great having the back matter, because I think it makes the book more useful. What are your thoughts on that? Like, especially in the classroom?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think it has a little bit, it's a fun story. It's humorous. There's heart, but then you also have this great opportunity to share some really interesting facts about a cool creature. And so it has that science connection as well. And I'm excited about that. Just when I think about school visits, being able to share that information, that nonfiction back matter. So I love it when books do that. I love it when books add extra information, whether it's back matter or an author's note or just some other kind of connection. I think it provides more opportunities for deeper conversations and learning. So I'm all about that kind of thing when you can do it.
And what is a takeaway that you would want teachers, kids, parents, like, your readers to take away when they're flipping through the book, reading the story? Like, what are some of the takeaways you'd like people to have?
Oh, yeah. Well, so many. I mean, I think one of the main takeaways about the story itself is that exciting things await us when we can be brave. If we can just be brave and kind of step outside our comfort zone, then exciting opportunities are waiting for us. I think sometimes, especially as somebody who deals with anxiety, I often talk myself out of things before I even try them because I'm so nervous and I can think of all the bad things that are going to go wrong. You know, this octopus doesn't really want to go to school because this octopus is having a great time at home playing hide and seek and dress up. Why would I want to go anywhere else? You know, and what he finds when he goes to school in the end is that it's really exciting and it's also a fun and amazing place. So I think one of the takeaways is just to be brave, you know, to try new things. And it's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to have those jitters, but be brave anyway. So I think that's one of the big takeaways. And then I just hope that kids leave loving octopuses as much as I do and being interested in the world around them. I love nature. I love animals. I love being outside, snorkeling, those kind of things. I love to be a part of the world around us. So I hope that, you know, some of those facts inspire kids to dig a little deeper into the animals and the world around them.
And how long did it take you to write this book and put it together? Would
Yeah,
you say?
so that's an interesting question. I never quite know how to answer it because the first story that I was inspired by, I worked on that for a couple years, I think. At least 2 years, I would say. And then when I rewrote it in second person, so the first story was written, you know, third person point of view, and it was about this little girl. And then when I rewrote it and I turned it into the octopus book, I decided to write it in second person, and it came very quickly. Like, I think I wrote the first draft in one sitting and then made very few changes afterwards. So that does not normally happen. Normally, I'm working on a manuscript for years and years and years, but I think sometimes it happens when I'm rewriting a story and I've let it sit and then I come back to it because it's almost like my subconscious brain has kind of worked out some of the issues. And I really do believe that walking away from a manuscript can be the best thing for it because you don't really know what's going on in your brain and how it's kind of working out those issues. So this version did not take me very long, but I wrote the first story that inspired it, you know, 2 years earlier, and I'd worked on it for 2 years. So I never quite know how to answer those questions.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, that ended up being a hot potato story. But for most of us, you know, we all have probably one or two manuscripts that have been hot potatoes or like, you know, a flood of the moment, and you're like, woo, let me write the story. But then, you know, I'd say a majority of my books, though, or stories, you know, they take time. And
Yes.
And sometimes you do need that marination or the back burner because when you're trying to force the story to happen, like, I need to get it down now, it never works. Like, at least for me, it never works. It's like, I'm not going to get through it. I literally have to maybe walk away from it, put it away, and then, you know, go back to it. And I think that's something that, you know, other authors, illustrators, you know, creatives are like beating themselves up, like, I can't get through this. What would be your biggest advice to people, creatives in particular, about when they're working on a project, that it's okay to be kind? Give yourself grace.
You know, I'm so good at beating myself up. That really resonates with me because I can make myself feel bad about the whole thing if I want to, you know, my process, my abilities, my skills, my lack of skills, my terrible ideas. I can just beat myself up like the best of them. But for me, what I'm learning more and more is that I have to trust my process. And sometimes my process is just walking away. If I can't, like you said, it doesn't work for me when I try to force something that's not coming. It doesn't work. And it just leads to more and more frustration. So for me, I think, yes, being kind to myself, using positive self-talk instead of negative self-talk, and taking a break, whether that's 5 minutes, you got to just walk away and take some deep breaths or go for a walk for 15 minutes or walk away for a year. Like when a manuscript isn't working, I don't think it serves you or the manuscript to try to force it. I think it just is better if you can walk away. And I think part of that comes back to like the fact that I really fall in love with my own words. And so if I'm forcing a manuscript and I know it's not working, it's really hard for me to change it, even if I know something needs to change, because I really, like this phrase or I like this pretty word that I used. So it's hard for me to even make any real changes or revisions, even when I know something's not working. But I just pulled out a manuscript that I wrote, I don't know, 2 years ago. I don't even know when I wrote it. I haven't looked at it since then. And I pulled it out and I loved it, and it made me laugh, and I started working on it. And it was so much easier to cut the lines I knew I didn't need, because I was no longer married to them. It had been 2 years. I had enough time. And I think that's sometimes why it's easier to revise and things click more easily after you've had a break, is because you're more open to making those changes and those revisions when you haven't like poured your life and soul into it for like 6 months and you're like, I can't change this because I really love this phrase, even if that phrase isn't working. So for me, I think that's part of the magic of taking a break. I do think it's important as a writer to be kind to yourself, because this industry is full of rejections and hard moments and challenging work. And so I think when we are stuck on a manuscript, it's important to be kind and to remember what you've done well, and also to be able to take a break and to walk away without beating yourself up or feeling bad about that or forcing it. I think, like you had said, Nadia, when you try to force something, it doesn't go well. And I think that's true for most people. It's certainly true for me as well. And sometimes you might just need a 5-minute break. You might need a 15-minute break to go outside and go for a walk. Maybe you need a few months or even a couple years. But I think when you come back to it later, refreshed and with fresh eyes, it helps you to see what's not working and why. And it also allows you the time and space you need to make those changes, because I get really attached to my words. And even when I know a manuscript isn't flowing correctly the way I want it to, it's hard for me to cut the words that need to be cut sometimes. So it's great to take a break, to be kind, to do something fun that you enjoy, take some deep breaths, whatever it is, and then come back refreshed, and always works better. And I think too, that's why this manuscript really did come together more quickly, is because I knew the heart of the story from the first one. And I knew my new obsession with octopuses, kind of fueled that, but I wanted to keep the heart of it the same. And it came out really easily, which doesn't happen often. And so but again, I had walked away from that first manuscript for 2 years and then came back and made something new. So.
And for you, like when you are in that position where you've taken from one manuscript and you've pulled it with another to create a new work, do you think that there's still hope for that first story, maybe?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because it's similar. I mean, every line is different. Only one line stayed the same, and it's the last line. Everything else is different, and the point of view is different, but it's similar enough. It's a school story. It's about someone who's nervous to go. They have tentacles. I don't know if I could do that one again. But I do think our stories that don't work are ones that we should revisit, because I think they can inspire something new. So maybe that one will inspire a different story, another one in some way. There are parts about that story that I really love that I didn't get to include in the new one. So maybe it would be fun to go back and see if I can work those parts into something else. How many stories can one story birth? I don't know. Countless, maybe. So I think that's another reason why it's important to hold on to those manuscripts that maybe don't sell, but still connect with you in some way, because there's a piece of you in them, and there's a part of your heart that still belongs to those stories. So trying to come back and revisit how you might work that into something else is always a good way to get new ideas, I think.
Well, talk to us a bit about that joy, because that is something that people don't realize. Sometimes, you try to force a story, or you try to write to a trend, and, that's a big no-no. We all know it, because it's like you'll write to that trend, but remember, like, everything is moving forward by 2 to 3 years. So talk about the joy and the importance of that. when you're writing a story?
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see the difference when I'm writing from a place of joy versus a place of have to. The words just flow more easily. It's more fun. I look forward to it versus, dreading it. And I really want my stories to bring joy to others. So for me, that's how I want them to begin. I want them to begin from a place of joy. Because if I'm writing from a place of frustration and struggle, or I have to do this, then I feel like that's going to come through in the writing, and that's not what I want to put out in the world. So I do think it's important to find ways to capture that joy. And sometimes it's really hard. I mean, this last year was the worst writing year of my life, hands down. It was a struggle, and I still showed up. I think it's still important to show up in those moments that are hard, because I think, if nothing else, you are practicing the writing, you're developing the discipline. But I gave myself grace this last year to just say, none of what I'm writing is really resonating with me, but I'm still showing up, and I'm doing my best, and that's okay. And maybe something will spark a different idea that I'm more excited about. We had a lot of health challenges in my family this year. Two very close family members were diagnosed with cancer. I had a pulmonary embolism at the beginning of the year, which threw off my health for about 5 or 6 months. It was a challenge. And then I had another really random viral infection. We still don't know what it was, but it caused me to have severe arthritis pain for like 2 months. So it was just a rough year, and I couldn't really connect with the funny or the joy. It was hard to do that. And I typically write funny manuscripts, but I wasn't in the mood to write anything funny. I didn't feel funny. Life didn't feel very funny to me. So it was challenging. And I don't know if anything that I wrote this past year will really end up anywhere. I don't know, but maybe there's bits of me in there that I can go back to later that'll inspire something else. So I think that just goes back to what you were saying earlier about just being kind to yourself in those moments. And just being kind.
It's needed. And we often don't do that. Now, the other, like you were just talking about, your style of writing, and that you do humor books, because that's what we know you for. We're like, everything we read from you is always funny, hilarious. And there's such I don't want to say there's a lack of women writing humorous stories, but a lot of the times, female authors don't get that cred. And how do you think you can change that, seeing that you are writing humor and you are putting your work out there?
Yeah.
Or is there a need to change that? I mean, I think there is, but
yeah. Well, I think just by doing what we're doing, there are a lot of really funny, incredible women writers out there. And so I think just by continuing to write high quality books that make people laugh is the way to change that, is by getting the word out and by supporting other funny female writers, and just trying to spread the word, I guess, because they're out there. There are a lot of hilarious women writers that I love and admire. Elise Parsley is one of my favorites. Tammy Sarr writes some really funny, humorous books. Tara Lazar. Oh my goodness, there's so many. I mean, just tons and tons of female writers that I admire and respect. So I think it's just a matter of sharing those books, with kids. I work at a library, so I get to share those kind of books all the time with kids. And I do my best to support them and promote them as much as possible.
And what do you think about books that have humor resonate so much with people, with kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. Those are the books that my kids always loved the most. And the ones that we enjoyed reading together the most were the funny books. I think just, everybody loves to laugh. Everybody loves to feel good, and to have that joy like bubbling out of you in the form of laughter just feels good. And especially these last few years, they've been really hard, for the world and for this country. And I think it's even more important to find things that bring us joy, to find opportunities to laugh. Sometimes we have to look for them. Sometimes we have to really search hard when we're going through something. Like I said, like this last year wasn't feeling very funny for me, but I still wanted to experience joy and laughter. And so for me, I think that's why people resonate with humorous books, is because it just feels good, and there have been studies that have talked about how important laughter is for our bodies, physically and mentally, emotionally. So they're always going to be my favorite to read and my favorite to write. And maybe that just comes to it. My husband's very funny. I live with a funny individual who makes me laugh every day. So I think that's just kind of how I want to live my life. I really want to try to find the joy in every day and to put that into my writing.
So now we were talking about favorites. Can you share with us some of your favorite spreads? Because we also want to talk about the art, because the art in the book is gorgeous.
Oh man,
funny.
You asked me to share some of my favorite spreads before we started recording, and I'm like, Nadia, can I just show the whole book? I cannot pick a favorite spread.
You can just flip through the pages this way.
I mean, Jacqueline's art is beyond words, honestly. I can't find words to describe it. It's colorful and vibrant and fun, and she has all these little details that are just magical. Like the way she uses light. There's this, I'll show it to you, this one spread early in the beginning, where they're at a little they're playing dress up and playing in a rocket ship, and just the way she made these twinkle lights are so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And then one of the things that I wasn't sure how an illustrator was going to pull off is the octopus camouflage, because they really do blend in with their surroundings. So octopuses are one of the few creatures that can change not only the color of their skin, but they can also change the texture. So they literally disappear. They blend in perfectly with their surroundings. And I wasn't sure how Jacqueline was going to do that, but she nailed it. I don't know how, but she did. Here's one in the very beginning where the octopus is blending in with the tiles. I
like the one in the rose garden. Is it the rose garden or the tomato plant?
Yes.
That was the one that I was like, where is it? Yep.
He's hiding right there. In like some plants. And that's another thing that makes it really fun. This book is almost like a search and find book. I think kids are going to have a great time looking for the octopus hidden. I mean, he's hidden. I'm not going to point him out, but there's 3 places he's hiding on this page, hiding on this page. I mean, it's just incredible. And then in the back, when he goes to school, there's a page where it shows all of the octopuses kind of hanging up their backpacks in the cubby. And there's, I think, 10 octopuses hiding in there, and they're blending in with their backpacks. So it's incredible. I don't know how she did it. She is a genius. She's brilliant. Her work is, I've always loved her work. And it's just a thrill to be able to have my name on the cover of a book with her, because she's brilliant. And I'm so honored that she signed on for this project and just nailed it. I mean, it's amazing. It's beyond anything I could have ever imagined. So,
because we now have experience working with different illustrators, that, it helps you approach your new manuscripts in a different way, because now you can think also more visually. So that's what I've found when I'm writing now. How about you?
Yes, I've always been pretty visual anyway when I'm writing. So when I'm writing a manuscript for the first time, I put a lot of art notes in for myself, just because I know that a lot of the action is going to be happening in the pictures. And I want that. I want the story to be told just as much in the pictures as they are as it is in my text. So I'm a visual thinker, and I put a lot of art notes in, and then I go back and I'm like, which ones can I take out? Which ones do I really only need for clarity? And my hope is always that even if I leave art notes in for my editor, that they take them out before it goes to the illustrator, because I know that I have a vision in my head, but whatever that illustrator is going to come up with is going to be 100 times better than what I could have come up with, because they think visually even more than I do, and they have something, their own unique experiences that they're bringing to the manuscript. And I want those to be a part of this shared book. It's not just my book, it's our book. And I want them to bring their experiences and their ideas and their vision to it as well. So I do think it's changed a little bit in that I use fewer art notes, even for myself, because I just trust that someone's going to get it. The editor's going to get it just based on the text. That was kind of always my fear, is if people weren't going to understand what I was writing. But I think, I've had such a positive experience that it's allowed me to just use them even less for myself.
Just what are some of the unexpected things that you noticed or got out of the book that you don't want to really give away, but you'd like people to watch out for, aside from the camouflage?
Yeah, the camouflage. Well, the camouflage, that's one of my favorite parts about it, is just being able to play hide and seek while you're reading the book is really fun, trying to spot the octopuses. I have to tell you, I literally, the first time I saw it, I was tricked by one of the illustrations. I thought the octopus was one place and it was not. And I think it was like 2 or 3 times of me reading the book before I realized that, because it was so well camouflaged. So that was pretty funny. I'm not going to tell you which one, because that'll give it away. But there was one spread that tricked me. The other things, there was one picture that I'm going to show. It's one of my favorite illustrations, is this one right here. It's the little girl who's the owner or friend of this octopus and is trying to get him to school, is struggling. And it is just the best expression ever. She's feeling a little frustrated and the octopus is on her face and will not let go. And it's that picture delights me every time I see it, because it just is, she's so perfectly captured the emotion of that moment, where you're trying to be patient with your little one or your octopus and things aren't going well, and you're just feeling the frustration, but doing your very best to hold it together. So that one was good. The other thing that surprised me was just some of the ways that Jacqueline, the details that Jacqueline included in the octopus school. A friend of mine just recently read this, and she said, I was really surprised by the ending. And I don't know if I can say it. It didn't occur to me ever. I'm going to say it. She was surprised because she thought the octopus was going to a human school. And in reality, she's going to an octopus school. And so she's like, I thought the little girl was getting the octopus ready so they could both go to school. And that was so delightful when I got to the end and saw that the octopus actually had his own school. So that was surprising to me to hear her perspective on that. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that. But that was a fun surprise too. So,
well, yeah. I think it's because of your first books.
Yeah, right.
My school stinks, or the school stinks. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That is so awesome. Okay, so overall, now you have 3 books out into the world. Mm-hmm. What would you say is your takeaway? How do you feel that you've grown, not only as a person but as an author, or even as a mom who writes picture books?
That's interesting. I still feel like I have so much learning to do, but the areas where I've grown, I'm probably more patient. I'm hopefully more patient. I think if anything, this industry will teach you patience, because it moves so slowly, and it doesn't even faze me anymore. My husband was telling a story at work the other day about how he was getting a little frustrated because somebody hadn't replied to his email in like 48 hours. And he's like, that's just standard. I don't understand why he didn't reply to me. And I'm like, are you serious? Like 48 hours? You get an email back in 48 hours from somebody in my industry. Right? But I think it's taught me just a little more patience, as far as growing as an author, I think I'm more, this could be a good thing or a bad thing. I think I have a better understanding of which ideas have potential and which ones don't. And so from a marketing standpoint, I think I have, it's easier for me to determine which ones really have potential to compete and which ones don't. And unfortunately, the downside of that is that a lot of times I don't write stories anymore because I reject the idea before I even get started. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I think it's good to be able to understand the market, but I think sometimes the negative side of that is that you end up kind of rejecting an idea before you've even started. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is something I've learned about myself is to just be a little more aware of the market. And then as a mom, I'm still learning balance. I think working at home is challenging because as a writer, there's always things you could be doing. There's always ideas that could be developing. There's manuscripts that could, you could be revising. There's things you could be critiquing. There's just, books to read, webinars to watch. There's always things you could be doing. My list is never complete. And my work's here at my house. So it's hard to kind of set those boundaries. I sometimes have a little bit of guilt about the time that I gave up on the weekends and the evenings when I was really chasing this dream early on. And I'm glad I did it, but I'm trying to be better now about setting boundaries and making sure that I am spending the time with my family and that I'm fully engaged with them rather than, checking on social media or, revising this manuscript while we're watching a movie. I'm trying to just be more fully present when I'm with my family. And I don't always succeed at that, but I'm trying. I'm at least aware that those boundaries need to happen. That's the first step. I'm aware and I'm working on it. So we'll see.
I'm guilty
Ask
of
me
that
again.
too.
I know, right? Ask me again in a few years, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's a learning curve that we're all on. And that's why I always tell my family, they're like, if I say this day of the week is my day, my time, like that's my day, my time, and I devote it, strictly to writing or in the wee hours of the morning, because I'm an insomniac. I have a tough time going to sleep or staying asleep because I only get about 4 hours a night. So it's yeah, it's really tough. And so I wanted to see, like, well, am I the only one? Where I'm stealing time from here and there to like get a manuscript done or to work on a revision or an editorial note from your editor. It's just, I find it very hard sometimes to juggle or balance life, but I know when you said the word, I like to be present, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So when I'm with my family and I sit with them, I put away my phone or I just leave it in the office. And when I'm with them, I just hang with them and then later on go back and do what I need to do. But oh my gosh, it is a juggling act.
It is hard
as an author. And all the other stuff that people don't see, like, you're failing miserably behind the scenes, even though your social media may look like, oh, her life is picture perfect. And I'm here to tell you, yeah, it may look like it, but
yeah, no, it's not. And yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And like I said, there's never a moment where you're fully done with everything. So that makes it challenging to be present when you know that you could be working on something else. I can't believe you function on 4 hours of sleep, Nadia. That is the one area that I really do try to protect. And I think maybe my health this last year and the health of my family members who are struggling kind of really put that in perspective for me. Just the importance of caring for my body physically. Like, I think I beat my body up for too many years with too little sleep and too much go and that kind of constant stress. I actually had a doctor recommend this year I take a break from writing, which was a first. And I haven't obviously done that, but that was really, I don't know what the word is, convicting maybe about like my boundaries that I need to set and priorities that I need to assess. So I don't know. It's a work in progress, but I'm trying to be better. Like I love writing. It is the thing that has brought me as far as career wise, it is the thing that has brought me the most joy. I can lose myself for hours writing. Last night, I was working on some stuff and I was up until like 9 or 10, working. And that doesn't happen very much anymore. I really try to like be home and with my kids downstairs when they're here, but I just had a deadline that I was working on. And so I was working till like 10 and I loved it. Like it fills me up. So it's one of those things that I think can take so much from you, but also can fill you up. So it's hard to find that perfect balance because it does take its physical toll, I think, and mental toll. When you're getting rejected all the time, that takes a mental toll. I say to my husband all the time that like, what other job do you go to where you get rejected like 99% of the time? Or like your boss says to you, this is really good, but not good enough. Like it's kind of one of those things where you're like, that doesn't really happen in very many other fields, like the arts, probably acting and that kind of stuff, but it doesn't really happen. And so I think it does take a mental toll and a physical toll and an emotional toll that we're not always aware of because we enjoy the writing so much. And so when my doctor was like, yeah, you should maybe take a break from writing, I'm like, what? It just hadn't occurred to me because it simultaneously brings me so much joy. So I don't know. I haven't figured that one out. That is a mystery I'm still working on. And maybe it'll get easier the more I do it, but I'll let you know.
It's kind of like, hint, hint, self-care.
Yes. Yeah. And I do think it's so important. It's like we talked about earlier, just being kind to yourself and taking breaks when you need it and not beating yourself up. You'll get beat up enough in this business. Just don't be part of the crowd that does that. Find your support group that'll be there to encourage you and get you through the hard times and be your own support person, be the one who says you're awesome and, you deserve a break. It's okay. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important for us to do that. And that's why I always pay it forward and I try to support and amplify, elevate, friends, strangers, like if I see someone posting something that I think is amazing, I'll be like, oh, they don't know me, but I'll still like.
You are, oh man, Nadia, you are one of the biggest cheerleaders in this industry and supporters and encouragers. Like you bring the joy and spread it to everyone else. Like that's one of the things I love most about you is that you are one of those bright lights in this industry that people can always depend on to just, bring some joy to their day. And I really appreciate that about you, the energy that you bring to everything that you do and just the kindness that you're so willing to share with those around you.
Well, we've talked about this, behind the scenes about people being secret squirrels about information. And I think knowledge is power. And I want the people around me to be powerful. I want the people around me to have the knowledge because I think it's important to pool whatever knowledge that we all have because it makes us greater together. So when you're in a group with people and someone's like, they know the answer and you go to them and you ask and they're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you can Google it. And it's like, yeah, but you just did that. Like you can't just
share that information.
Share that. To me, I feel like that's selfish and it's like a crab in a bucket mentality where you're trying to keep things inward because you don't want others to surpass you. But it's kind of like, the parent-child relationship. Every generation gets smarter, better than the previous generation. And I feel like as new authors coming in, that's how we should be working together, where we're uplifting, we're showing you like, hey, I don't write that, but if you are looking for this book, here's the person who can help you. They're new, but they've got a lot of potential and lots to offer. And I feel like that's always been my philosophy, whether it was TV news, whether it was, being a singer-songwriter, putting myself out there as a performer, like always sharing and trying to do things to help the people around me. And it's because I come from these hyper competitive kind of, backgrounds. I'm kind of like, I've always wanted to do kid lit. And so when I finally am here right now, I feel like it's obvious, no matter what you're doing, that you always need help, because the people who get ahead, or the people who move ahead, are the people who are getting that hand up or getting that amplification, because this is a hard business, just like TV news, just like trying to be a performer, any creative endeavor, because the pay is horrible. As writers,
very inconsistent. Yeah, very
inconsistent. It's erratic. Like, you never know what's going to work, what's not going to work.
Right.
Like, even editors, they'll be like, "Oh, this is a hot book," but then it doesn't sell, or it doesn't do well, and then maybe 5 or 6 years down the line, boom,
Yeah.
It finds a new set of life. Right?
It is. It's unpredictable. It is a very unpredictable and difficult business, and I think the one thing that I will say about the kidlit community is I do feel like there's a lot of people who are willing to just help others, and it's such a supportive and encouraging community, which is really amazing to me, is how willing people are to help and answer questions and support in any way they can. And that's one of the things I love most about being a writer, is being a part of this community, because it's pretty phenomenal how wonderful these people are.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, there are a few ways to help Picturebooking out and shape what this show is. You can subscribe and rate the podcast on whatever player you are listening to right now, and send this episode to your book friends. Have you read a fantastic book lately, or have a creator in mind that we need to have on? Subscribe to the Picturebooking newsletter at picturebooking.com/listen. And we'll let you know when we are ready to book future episodes.